Are you dreaming of retiring early or living your best life abroad? Picture yourself sipping mojitos by the beach all day long or exploring cobblestone streets in Europe. But wait, before you pack your bags, there are some things that you need to know before you make this dream reality. Today's video is about breaking down the top things you need to know to prepare to retire and live abroad, whether you are 40, 50, 70, or hell, 80. Let's get into it. Hi there, I'm Cha Jones, and welcome to my channel, Life's a Vacay. I am an expat coach and lifestyle consultant who helps women create a softer life. But as an expat coach, I also help people who are moving abroad, particularly self initiated expats who want to have a softer life, but they also want to have a life where they can manage the current life that they have, but in a cost effective way. Think that's the best way to say that. So, a lot of the people that I work with, if I'm not working with corporate clients that are traditional expats, which means that a company is footing the bill for them to move abroad for work, other expats who are self initiated expats, like your digital nomads, retirees, individuals who just like, I want to live in another country, but they're footing the bill. They are managing all expenses. And oftentimes, those individuals, because they don't have a large company backing them, don't know all the intricate details. That's where I come in. I'll help them figure out what they need to actually move abroad. And some people who have traveled abroad think that because they've traveled and they may have gone to 30, 40, 50 countries, but traveling and living two very different things. And if you haven't lived abroad, there are a lot of things that you just don't know in these international streets. So that's where I come in. I'm here to help. So today I want to talk about how you can actually live abroad and retire. And you don't have to wait till you're 60, 70 years old and don't have the energy or the courage to move abroad. You can actually do it. I know people who are doing it at 35, 40. Depends on how you've managed your current life and how you want to move forward. So let's just dive in deep and talk about some of the things that you're going to need to do to prepare to move abroad. So the first thing I want to talk about is financial preparation. You can't move abroad if you're broke. Hell, you can't even live in America broke. So it's going to be difficult to move abroad broke. So I want you to think about and evaluate what your retirement budget looks like. So understand your expenses in the destination country, the cost of living, the taxes, healthcare, all of these things are important. Um, and some of the visas that you would be seeking to live in that particular country require you to have health insurance. Some of them will allow you to get health insurance in that particular country, but you have to actually do the research and your homework to figure out what all comes with the cost of living. So it's not just moving there and can you afford to pay the rent every month? Can you afford to be sick there? Can you afford to eat there? Can you afford to live there? But can you afford to do all the other things that you want to do that require you to budget? So think about those things because those are important. Create multiple streams of income. So let's just say you're 40. you're not at retirement age, but you're ready to leave the country. You want to live in a different country where things are more affordable. I'm not going to say cheap because cheap is relative. And when you start talking about cheap, that's a whole nother ball game. But more affordable. Okay. So you might have lower cost of living expenses, which means that you can expand your life a little longer and the quality of life that you have. So leverage your savings. Think about your pension, think about your investments, think about remote work, think about it. Can you start a business on the type of visa that you're going to get in that particular country? Oftentimes, if you're going from one country that has a larger cost of living to a lower cost of living, oftentimes it's not advantageous for you to particularly work in that country, especially in that, in that currency. So you want to think about these things and consider having passive income, like rental property or dividends from investments that you currently have. So you start thinking about out of the box things. Now, I want to kind of backtrack because I should have started with this, and normally I do. Think about your why. I want you to write down your why for even wanting to move abroad and live in a different country because that's imperative. Once you have your why, then we can pretty much navigate and get you through the rest. Let's start with your why. And the why has to be bigger than I want cheaper property or I want a cheaper rental because that is not a good enough why to move all the way across the world. So think about some of those things first. And if you don't have multiple streams of income, you want to consider what can you do to create multiple streams of income. You also want to consider, or the third thing you want to do is consider the exchange rate and banking. Can you establish a bank account in that foreign country? And again, that's going to require oftentimes that you have a visa uh, to live or at least a residency in that particular country. So again, you want to go back and find out what does it require for me to move here and live in this country legally. Say that again, legally. So uh, you want to look at the exchange rate. Is there a good enough exchange rate where it would actually be feasible for you to live there? Um, I lived in Mexico. The exchange rate was 1 to 20 or 20 to 1. And so it made it actually very advantageous to live there. I currently live in Malaysia and the exchange rate is like 1 to 5, 5 to 1, right? So, so you, depending on where you are, you're going to get a better exchange rate. Now, with that, if you have an exchange rate, but then the cost of living is extremely high, it doesn't really benefit you. So you want to kind of like look at all things, like how much is food, how much is my living cost, like rentals, how much is just getting from A to B, and if I don't have a car, or should I buy a car? These things are going to be important. Learn about the currency fluctuations and considering holding accounts in both currencies. Um, and this is a shameless plug right now. I have a Wise account. And if you're considering getting a Wise account allows you to basically, it's like I'm going to consider it, it's a debit card that allows you to change money from your bank account in one country and shift it to a different currency or the currency that you live. And you can hold accounts there, put in savings. And as the currency fluctuates, you can hold it at a certain rate that you brought it in so that you're not losing money. Like you can actually put it in a jar, and it does exchange rates for I think over 150 different countries. So it's a great opportunity to have a card in your hand that you don't actually have to go out to the exchange um, office and exchange money and hands over cash. You can actually have a digital form and a card, and it gives you really good exchange rates. Plus, you can also check the exchange rates even before you do the exchange. Getting back to the video, but learn about the fluctuation rates and definitely consider being able to have your accounts in dual locations where you can exchange money. Now, let's talk about retirement visa options. So, you need to check residency options for retirees. So, some countries like Portugal or Malaysia, they have retirement visa programs. Like Mexico also has uh, a permanent resident visa. So, when you look into these countries, some of them have a large sums of money that you have to actually put up in a bank account um, to be held. Some of them do not. Some of them require that you be of a certain age. Some of them require that you have so much in your bank account. So they all have various, I guess, entry levels, and they span the gamut as far as what it is that's required for you to enter the country and legally have a visa, quote unquote, as a retirement. Now, you don't necessarily have to get a retirement or like a permanent visa. Some countries have temporary residency programs where you can do 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. So you want to also look into that. So ensure that you meet the requirements. Make sure that you have the required savings that is required for that particular visa, that you some countries need you to apply outside of the country. Some need you to apply within the country. So they all have different requirements. Just make sure that you are actually following the requirements. That is advantageous. Okay. So, in choosing your destination, here are some things that I think are necessary for you to think about. Research retirement friendly countries. All the countries are not retirement friendly. So, again, you're going to need to know about your visas. You're going to need to know about entries and things like that. So, highlight countries like Thailand, Mexico, Portugal, Malaysia. I'm not just throwing these out because I think that these are great places to go to or to live in. And I like all of the ones I listed. However, these all have programs that are retirement friendly, but make a list. But also think about what it is that you want in the destination that you are planning to move. Are you going to be terribly removed from your family? That's important to think about because what if it takes you 24, 48, 36 hours just to get home if something happens that's important? Maybe your child is having a child, maybe your child is getting married, maybe there's some things that you just want to engage in, yet it's going to take you 24 to 36 hours to make some moves, and that's not really what you want to do. For example, I lived in Mexico. It literally only took me 4 to 6 hours to get home if I needed to travel, and that just depended on which airline I was going to take, based on which one was more expensive or where I wanted to actually enter the country. I absolutely detest Miami's airport, entering on an international flight because it's the worst. But once you get past all of that, then it's actually advantageous because I can get to my next destination quickly. Um, Same thing with Dallas. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. However, getting there it had its perks. But I oftentimes rather take a bus, or I would at the time drive to Cancun to take a flight. Yes, I had to drive, almost 3 hours to take, you know, a flight, but I landed directly in, the city that I wanted to actually go to without having to do a bunch of transfer. So you want to think about those things as you're thinking about the destination that you want to live in, or at least start the retiring process. Also, think about key factors like climate, language. I've already mentioned proximity to your family, healthcare, healthcare quality. Okay, not just healthcare, but healthcare quality and community. One of the things that after I left Mexico, I realized is that I was leaving community. I had a established large community that I no longer was going to have. And being in Malaysia, I actually had to build my own community of expats that I had similarities with. And so you want to think about those things as you're thinking about where you're going to retire. The next thing that I think that you should think about is going to be safety. Um, I can also throw in political stability as well. I normally don't think about that at least the political stability aspect, but I think depending on where you're going, that is something that you possibly want to throw in as well. But safety is important, especially if you are a female. Um, when I think about, because I'm traveling with a child, I want it to be a place that I don't have to look over my shoulders. For instance, when I was looking for my next place after I left Mexico, I went to Colombia. I love Colombia. I love the food. I love the culture. I love all things Colombia, right? Now, Colombia is a large country, and I landed in Cartagena, and I love Cartagena. Um, but what I did not like is I didn't feel like I was going to be safe, or the same. I wasn't going to have the same level of safety that I had even living in Mexico, because I lived in one of the safest cities in North America. And so I I had I had become accustomed to a level of safety. For instance, I could leave my purse somewhere and walk away. Am I saying that you should do that? Absolutely not. But I am saying that the level of comfort, and to just be honest, you shouldn't get to a place where you're complacent or you have a level of comfort that you start slipping. Let's not talk about that, okay? But I want to feel like I don't have to watch my back constantly. I don't want to do this. I don't. Living in Korea, I did. You could leave stuff there. You could go to the bathroom. You can entrust people because nobody was going to take anything. Now, I think the people in Colombia and Cartagena were lovely. Like I said, I loved, but I just, even my son started to, like, when we would walk out, I didn't ask him for his tablet or anything. He was just handed to me because I think he felt like, I don't know what the situation is. And so he wouldn't even ask for it until we got to a place where he was comfortable. Then he would ask for the tablet back. So I'm saying all that to say this, that I'm not trying to fear into anyone, or to even speak on a country that I obviously don't live in, but I'm basing it off of the energy that I felt and the level of safety that I need. That's the same thing that you would have to do for yourself. Is it going to be acceptable for you? Regardless of what anybody else has to say, are you comfortable in that particular place? Because you want to avoid any unnecessary thing. Are there going to be certain things that are just going to happen? Absolutely. But if you can prevent certain things ahead of time, I say go for it. But I also want to research like safety rankings and political climates to avoid unexpected surprises. You can also, I think it's called I don't know the name of it, but with the embassy, you can register and they will give you warnings based off of how safe a place is. Now, I lives in Korea and I got warnings all the time about North Korea, something that I did not have to be warned about because I was pretty safe. So take that in consideration and use your common sense, but also use your guts. Okay? Intuition is a must. So, next thing I want to talk about is healthcare. Affordable healthcare options abroad. What you have to do is compare healthcare systems and costs. Private insurance it's going to be costly, right, in most cases. And then you also have public options for retirees. And you really need to just look at what that particular country has to offer because as a foreigner, you may or may not have good options. So do your research. You can also call health insurance companies that do global options and shop around. A lot of times those are very expensive, but depending on where you're going, and you can also have memberships. Like if you're a member of Internations, I think they also have a health insurance option that you can look into. But based off of certain memberships, they have discounted rates for healthcare. That's all I'm trying to say. Think about international health insurance, and these covers could cover, like, let's just say before you set up any plans, make sure you have travel insurance, if nothing else. And this just secures you and covers you in case there's an emergency while you're traveling. And it may allow for you to get reimbursed. It may actually allow for you to have uh, uh, ways home if you get sick, get you back to the States, things like that. All of these things are important. You want to look into those things. Um, you also want to do a pre-move checkup. So handle any dental, vision, medical needs before you actually move or you leave your home country. Because at least number one, you'll know if there's something that you need to look further into, like a health concern. Also, you'll know, okay, I have a clean bill of health. I feel comfortable moving forward. But then you also have paperwork that says, okay, this is where I'm at, and these are my levels, blah, blah, blah. This is the medication that I'm being prescribed now. But I can say this moving abroad, you'll probably be less stressed. If you are on medication, in a few months, you probably won't even need that medication. So you're going to want to also establish a doctor that you trust in that foreign country. A lot of countries allow for like home visits and things like that, things that America no longer has, where they'll send somebody to do your lab work. They'll send somebody to do X-rays at your house, things like that. And so what you want to do is establish your new doctor in your new country. And then in a couple months after you've already done all your checkups before you left, then you can have those things reevaluated because what I do know is that you will be less stressed. Hopefully, if you living right, you should be less stressed. And so, if you are currently on, high blood pressure medicine, for an example, now I'm not a doctor. Do not take all of my words and try to use them against me. What I'm saying is that um, if you are living right and you are in a new environment where you have less stress, maybe you're out walking, you're more active, doing some things, so your levels may change. So, in a few months, after you've done your pre move checkups, once you get established, follow up. That way, you know where you are and you can move forward. The next thing I want to talk about is logistics and planning. I cannot say this enough. I work with people all the time who have this idea or notion that they want to bring stuff to a new country. One, I'm going to say this. Unless you are a traditional expat where you have a company that is actually relocating and they're going to take your household goods, put them in a shipping container, and ship them to you, I would say don't do it. Now, I know people who have moved their whole house and they were fine with that. And I know people who never been to a country and they moved their sight unseen and they moved stuff. Okay. To each their own. I'm going to give you my expert opinion. I've been in this game for 15 years. I worked with traditional expats, I've worked with self initiated expats. I have moved myself, have even fallen into, oh, I really have sentimental value to this XYZ thing. I'm going to put it in a container and ship it to a country. Okay. And I'm going to say this after going through what I've gone through, shipping something, going through customs, especially if you're going to a country that they'll run amok on you, you'll have stuff sitting and you'll have to pay a storage fee for every day that it sits and it's not approved. So let's say your bill started off at $200. If you pay storage fees of 60, 80, $100 a day for it to sit until it clears customs, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Another thing you should think about is, for instance, appliances. You may want to take your best appliances, and I get it. I love to cook, and rebuying appliances can be expensive. However, think about this. A lot of times the adapters don't work, and so you have to buy converters. And converters, I'm not talking about just the uh, I'm not talking about like normally there's one sitting around. I'm not just talking about like what you would plug in the outlet to plug your like dryer in, or hair dryer or phone charger. I'm talking about the one that converts the power and exchanges it so that it's even, so it won't blow out. You need those, right? To actually have appliance work. Yes, can you plug your phone charger into the wall using an adapter? An adapter is different than a converter switch. Converter switch converts the power voltage to the from one country to the next. The adapters does not. It just allows you to plug in and changes the plug setting, right? From like the North American one to like a European one. Um, or like, so you have your Korean, like the Asian one. Then you also have the three prong. There, it's a situation. Now, if you were to bring your greatest appliance, there's no guarantee that that appliance will not circuit break or blow. Listen, I learned this hard way. I had a beautiful cheap pair flat iron when I moved to Korea. Plugged it in, boom, 5 minutes. Literally, it wasn't even 5 minutes. It was actually like 2.4 seconds. And I no longer had my nice, expensive flat iron because it needed to go on a converter and not an adapter. And so what happens is you'll end up blowing a lot of the appliances because it just won't convert. So you want to think about those things. So while you're thinking, oh, I should bring this, it might not be a good idea. It actually might be hella cheaper to purchase something new. So try to downsize, or if you have sentimental things, maybe you can have a family member store them for you in an attic, or, part of their house that they're not using. Or maybe you just want to go ahead and sell them. And move on and say your blessings to them. Because living abroad can, you know, you want to simplify your life. So downsizing is imperative, especially as you move forward with your new life. As Americans, we want to take everything with us. We want to hold on to things. We want to put stuff in storage and pay gazillion dollars for it. When, listen, if you are not using it, touching it, and holding it, and you can go 30 days without it, you probably can go the rest of your life without it. That's just my personal opinion. Now, I do have a small storage that's like a locker. Like, it started off at $35. Now we at 100. So now it's at a point where we like, do we really need those things? And those are things that actually have value, like paintings and things like that. So, but now I have to consider, is it more valuable to keep or to let them go? And so I'm not just giving you advice that I can't take for myself, because we all have to reevaluate, is it worth it? And I'm at that place where, is it worth it? So think about that. Think about legal documentation that you're going to need. Ensure that your passport actually has enough pages on it for you to move properly. Also, you want to make sure that your passport's up to date and that you have at least 6 months still on your passport before you move. You want to make sure you have a will. You make sure your power of attorney is up to date. Make sure your life insurances are all squared away. Obtain copies of vital records. Make sure that you have all your health things that you're gonna do your pre-leave checkup. Make sure you have all that paperwork with you. Maybe make copies of it. Leave something with someone that you can trust. Set up postal service. I know I had for a long time my my mail going to a family member, and then I was like, listen, let me take control of this. I can have it go to a postal service. They'll scan it. They'll let me see what, came in the mail. I can say discard it. I can say go ahead and ship that to me. And postal service is a good thing for you. Think about shipping and customs. Again, is it worth it? That would be something that you need to ask yourself, because you need to decide whether you bring things or whether you buy things. And again, especially appliances, remember, unless, and this is something you need to research, unless the adapters or the outlets are the same, then you run the chance of it actually burning out. So think about that. And then if you're shipping things, you got to think about the cost of customs taxes, and it can add up quickly. Take it from me. That's all I'm gonna say. Uh, community. Community is important. So I want you to think about your social and cultural integration as you move abroad. Learning the language may be a must. I currently live in a place where they speak English for the most part. 85, 90% of people speak English. I haven't ever had an incident where someone didn't understand me or we weren't speaking the same language here. In Mexico, not so much. Use my translator a lot. But I also lived where a lot of people spoke English, so it wasn't so bad, but that can be an issue. When I lived in Korea, it wasn't necessarily an issue. I had started trying to learn Korean prior to going to Korea, so I knew certain words, but there was often times where I had to call a translator. And Korea happened to have a lot of translation services at that time, because um, even at the taxi, you could call a certain number, you could give your phone to the taxi driver, the person would translate where you want to go, and then give you your phone back. And so you have services like that. So just depending on the country, you might have different options, but it's nice to know key phrases. Hello, thank you, where's the bathroom? just so that you can get through your first week. And then also make sure that Google Translate is your friend so that you can start to like navigate and it'll get better. But also consider taking language classes. You also want to build community. Find some expat communities that are in your area. Um, if you happen to be African American, there are groups on Facebook, brothers and sisters of this, brothers and sisters of that, black in this, black in that. Um, and again, if you like me and you don't find it where you are, create it. But oftentimes you will find, especially like on like social media sites, there are expat groups all over the place. Uh, there are organizations like Internations, which has been around for years. Started with uh, you had to have members only invite you into their group. It's not like that anymore, but it started with diplomats and foreign service people. And so there are a plethora of different avenues that you can go down. There's meetups. There are different things that you can do to join expat groups and local organizations because you also want to integrate yourself within the community because you you may think, "Oh, I'm an introvert." I am an introvert as well. And it's totally different. When you start the expat process, you're going to have cultural awareness. You are going to go through different layers of trying to understand. Like, you'll even go to a point where, why did I do this? Um, there are just different phases that you go through as an expat. It doesn't hit everyone the same. But one of the things that makes it easier is having community and people that you can engage with, whether it be other expats, whether it be other people who same are part of your same nationality, from the same country, um, or have something in common. You need to have a support system because you will go through highs and lows until you get to a place where you're comfortable and you can actually, sit with, okay, I made this decision and I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm doing the things I want to do. But there are challenges and sometimes you just need to have a familiar face and or a familiar setting that allows you to grow from there. So, um, I absolutely suggest that you make sure you have community. The other thing is cultural um, adaptation. You are going to want to prepare for the cultural differences. Please don't bring your home country stuff to the new country. That's why you're leaving. You're leaving because you want something different. So act accordingly. Um, People don't do everything the same way all over the world. Know that. Be prepared for some cultural differences like cold water. You might be accustomed to having warm water, hot water. Cold water is not a thing everywhere. It's water. It's not a thing everywhere. Most people do not even drink water with ice. I happen to drink, I cannot stand no hot water, but I know to ask because otherwise, when you bring the water, I'm going, what is this? But just be prepared to there's nuances that you just have to get prepared. Sometimes service is much slower. For here in Malaysia, you can be in a sitting with 4 or 5 different people. Y'all all ordered together, and each person's food is gonna come out separately. So like you don't want to start eating, but it may be another 5 to 10 minutes before the next person gets their food. So I'm gonna have to say I hope y'all don't mind, but I'm gonna go ahead and start because that's what you're gonna have to do. And it's something you get accustomed to. That don't make that a thing. There are unique traditions, for every culture. Be flexible, go with the flow, and don't be like, "Ah, this is just stupid." What made your way the best way? And if it's so great, go back there. That's just it. So that's just my friendly advice to you. The next thing I want to talk about is testing your plan. Test. What I mean by that is, so maybe you thought that this was going to be the best country for you, and you get there and you realize this is not the best country for me. I had all these plans. I made my whole retirement based off of these things. Now, it's not a good fit. Have contingency plans. Spend a few months living on your retirement budget before you move. Test runs are important. Start thinking about, even to the point of maybe you're not accustomed to the cuisine in that particular country. Start going to, if you're moving to Korea, start going to Korean restaurants. Start now. Granted, they're going to be a little bit different because you got the Western version while you're in America. And then once you move to the actual country, the food's going to taste a little different. So I'm just trying to get you prepared. So start stepping out the box before you actually step into your new box. And start just thinking about some of the things that you need to get accustomed to. Maybe you're not going to have a car anymore and you've had a car all your life. Start taking the Grab or an Uber or a Lyft to prepare for being driven around. Um, and just think about some of the things that your life is going to change and how you want to adapt to those changes without being a complete shock. So maybe write down a list of some of the things that you know are going to be different, and then that way you can kind of shift into that. But definitely creating a budget and trying to live off the budget that you're going to have in your new place is a great idea. You can also consult a professional, someone like myself who does this for a living, and ask questions. Don't be afraid to call a consultant and say, I want to take some time with you and ask some questions to help me prepare. What are my blind spots? Because oftentimes we think we know what we know because we did all this research because Google's great, but Google can't think for you if you've never been in that situation to even think about your blind spots. I live this life day in, day out. I have done it in three different countries, and all of them were very different, right? And so there are some things that I know to be true that you haven't even thought about. So get you a professional, and it doesn't have to be me. Find the one that's a good fit for you. But if you are interested in working with me, I do have a discovery call so that we can see if it's a good fit. You can ask questions about where you're planning to go. You don't have to be moving to Malaysia. I can talk to you about any move that you want to make. Again, I'm not only doing this because I am an expat and I decided to throw some, sign up to say, hey, I'm a consultant. I've actually been doing this for 15 years, and my master's degree is in intercultural communications, where I've been working with relocation companies for the last 12 to 13 years. So if you want to work with me, or if you just want to get the questions out that you need to ask the next consultant that you want to work with for a particular country, then please do go down to the description and get my contact information and let's have a chat. So that's where I want to stop today and say that you don't have to wait till you're 60, 70 years old to retire. You can, I know people who are 35 who decided, you know what, I've worked for, a few years, I've saved up money, I know that I don't want to work the rest of my life. I actually want to enjoy my life now. And I can do work on the side. I can do my business abroad. It's online. I am trading. I have all of these different systems set up. And so why not now? Right? Um, I started my podcast, Life's a Vacay, because it really was a vacay, and it still is. It's not in the same way because I'm not in the same time zone. So sometimes I have to stay up late to talk to people, and that could be very tiring because I'm also a single mom and I have a 5-year old who he has self-appointed himself to wake up at 7 a.m. And so, with that being said, that means I have to wake up at 7 a.m., even if I just got off calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm dealing with people in North America. So, you don't have to wait, you just have to prioritize. And if you truly want to live abroad, and this is something that you're adamant about, it's a goal of yours, or maybe you are going to stay, make sure that your pension is in place, and you want to start thinking about your options, there are options out there for you. And I suggest that you just start doing the research now. Start thinking about where it is that you want to go. Do you like cold weather? Do you like warm weather? Do you want to be at the beach? Do you want to be in the mountains? Start thinking about those things. What what does that life look like? Again, start with your why, then paint the picture of the life that you want to live. How do you want to wake up every morning? When do you want to wake up every morning? What do you want to do once you wake up? Do you want to take a walk, a stroll? Do you want to get in a car, have someone drive you? Do you want to drive? Think about the ideal life that you want to have. And then once you got all that down, you know why you want to do it and you know what that looks like. You don't have to know the how will come to you. But you do need to start with your why and you need to start with your what. The next things will come into place. So, whether you're retiring abroad or you're moving abroad for the very first time, it's a plan that you can make real. It is all possible. You just have to have the right preparation. Whether you're looking to stretch your retirement dollars or start a new chapter, it's never too early to start planning. So, what's stopping you? What do you want to do next? How can I help? And if I can't help, how can Google help? Comment below. Let me know where you're planning on moving, when you're planning on moving, and we'll even have a chit chat. But not only can I answer your questions, but other people can answer the questions in the comment. I really want to build up my community this year. So jump into the community and let's chit chat. Um, I'm excited for you, however you plan to make this move. And the preparation that you take today will create the life for tomorrow. So until next time, thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. And let's meet again. Until next time, keep living softly and boldly. I'm Cha Jones.